This is the 2026 solo sailing ban, and it is the shocking reason why regulators are targeting captains over 60 right now. Imagine sailing the open ocean for 40 years, surviving gales, fixing engines in the dark, and navigating by the stars, only to have a bureaucrat in a suit tell you that you are suddenly illegal. From the United States Coast Guard to massive new fines in Australia and the European Union, a global net is closing around older sailors. They say it is for safety, but the truth is hidden inside a secret policy called NPRM 2025-22. It is part of a high-stakes trap called the Insurance Matryoshka, a system of hidden layers designed to make your life at sea so expensive and complicated that you are forced to quit. They do not want to fix safety. They want to delete a whole generation from the water. Will you fight for your right to sail, or will you let a bureaucrat take your keys forever? The first crack in the hull appears in a single sentence buried deep inside the Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. Operators over the age of 60 are encouraged to maintain current medical and competency documentation as outlined in Subpart C, Section C4. Encouraged, not required, not mandated. But for anyone who has ever dealt with the Coast Guard, that word is a loaded pistol on the table. It is the kind of phrasing that looks harmless on paper, but becomes a bludgeon at the dock. Captain Ray Mercer knows this better than anyone. 43 years at sea, never lost a vessel, never missed a port call. On March 18, 2026, he tied up in Charleston after a solo crossing. The inspection report, stamped and initialed, reads like a script. Documentation encouraged per Subpart C section. C4. Lacking current medical and competency file. Entry denied pending compliance. No citation, no appeal. Just a denial and a polite suggestion to return with paperwork that, until now, was never a condition of entry. The cost to Ray was $2,600 in lost moorage, fuel and supplies, not to mention the humiliation of being sent home like an unlicensed teenager. This is how legal creep works. The Notice of Proposed Rulemaking never says you must, it just says you should. But the port inspector, the insurance underwriter, the bureaucrat with a checklist, they read between the lines. Encouraged becomes expected. Expected becomes required. And when the insurer gets a copy of that inspection artifact, suddenly your coverage is in jeopardy. The money trail runs silent but deep. A single line in a federal register becomes an excuse for an insurance denial, a port refusal, a career ended without warning. The old way was simple, experience counted. If you had the sea miles, the scars, the logbook, you were good enough. Now compliance is the new currency. A lifetime on the water is worth less than a doctor's note and a rubber stamp. The system is designed to look voluntary, but every encouraged becomes a noose. And if it can happen here, it can happen anywhere. Australia and the EU are watching. The trap is already baited. In Australia, the gate swings shut with a different kind of paperwork, one that comes with a price tag and a stopwatch. The Australian Maritime Safety Authority updated its safety management system requirements on June 1, 2025. Buried in the fine print, solo operators must now demonstrate their competency through a practical assessment. The cost is $800 Australian, upfront, non-refundable. This is not a voluntary refresher. It is a mandatory ticket to keep sailing alone, and it does not discriminate by experience. It only cares about your ability to tick boxes and pay the fee. Captain Joan Hennessy knows the drill. She is 66 years old, with 38 of them spent running charters up and down the Coral Sea. Her logbook is thick with storms weathered and rescues performed. None of that mattered when she sat across from an AMSA-approved assessor in a rented conference room in Brisbane. The assessment included a checklist of emergency procedures, navigation drills, and most galling, a reaction time test. The form, stamped with an $800 Australian invoice number, scored her responses on a scale that felt less like seamanship and more like a driver's license renewal. One slip, one slow answer, and the assessor's pen hovered over the fail box. The result was, does not meet current solo operations competency standard. Reassessment required. The reaction time test is a black box. There is no published rubric, no calibration standard, no way to appeal a subjective call. The AMSA checklist includes vague language about demonstrating sufficient alertness and decision-making under simulated stress. But what does that mean for a sailor who has spent decades making life-or-death calls at sea? The answer for Joan was a failed test and a bill for $800 Australian. No refund, no credit for experience, just a bureaucratic dead end dressed up as safety. The new SMS requirements claim to be about risk management, but the real risk is that seasoned captains are being priced and filtered off the water. The system rewards those who fit the paperwork, not those who have survived the worst the ocean can throw. It is a procedural gate designed to look objective, but behind the curtain, it is as subjective and as costly as the regulator wants it to be. Compliance, not competence, is the new standard. And for every Joan Hennessy, there is a silent ledger of lost sea miles and vanished wisdom, traded away for an invoice and a tick on a checklist. Europe's answer to the solo sailing squeeze does not come as a headline ban. It arrives in the fine print of what is called RCD 2024-18, an update buried in the endless churn of EU directives. The language is clinical, almost sterile. Operators of recreational craft on passages exceeding 48 hours are advised to carry a medical certificate, and that certificate must confirm the absence of any condition or medication that could impair safe navigation or emergency response. It sounds reasonable until you see the list. Blood pressure medication, statins, beta blockers. Even the most common prescriptions for aging bodies are flagged as red lines. Captain Anja Keller found out the hard way. She was 64 years old, sailing under the German flag, with 30 years solo between the Balearic Islands and the Aegean. Her physician's letter dated February 4, 2026, stated that the patient was stable on lisinopril and atorvastatin with no history of syncope, arrhythmia, or cognitive impairment and fit for extended sea passage. But the Port Authority in Cagliari had a denial template. They cited RCD 2024-18, Section 4.3, and recorded disqualifying medications present. The certificate was not recognized for solo operation exceeding 48 hours, and entry was refused. There was no appeal, no second opinion, just a bureaucrat with a checklist and a captain who suddenly did not count. The absurdity is that none of these drugs are banned for commercial crews under IMO guidelines, so long as the underlying condition is controlled. But for solo sailors, the EU has built a new gate. If you take the pills most doctors prescribe for a healthy retirement, you are out. Experience, judgment, and a spotless record are all irrelevant next to a line on a prescription pad. This is not about safety, it is about liability. The insurers get their legal out, the regulators get plausible deniability, and the mariner gets a denial letter stamped with the date, the section, and a prescription list that reads like a blacklist for anyone over 60. Satellite eyes sweep the coast, and every transponder ping is another thread in the digital net. Automatic identification systems, AIS, were sold as a safety revolution, but now, for captains over 60, they are a surveillance leash. On March 29, 2026, Captain Greg Foster, 67, received an audit notice by email. The email subject line read, AIS Compliance Review, Anomaly Detected. The body was pure algorithm. GPS coordinates, timestamps, a flagged gap of 22 minutes as he crossed the Gulf Stream. The audit cites failure to maintain a continuous AIS broadcast per section 7.2.3. Never mind that Foster's AIS antenna iced over in a squall, never mind 4 decades of clean records. The system does not care. The system only counts zeros and ones. Behind the audit, a private contractor's algorithm ran on satellite metadata. Every vessel's track is scored against a compliance matrix, no missing pings, no route deviations, no unexplained silences. Exceed the threshold, 15 minutes of lost signal, or a route that strays outside the digital boundary, and an automated report lands on your insurer's desk. No human judgment, just a red flag in a spreadsheet. The fine was $1,200, issued by mail, payable within 30 days. The real penalty comes later when Foster's insurance renewal is denied for documented non-compliance with recommended tracking protocols. The algorithms do the sorting and the insurers do the closing. Technician notes from the audit file read, like code, AIS export log attached. Satellite pass at 1742 UTC confirms intermittent signal. Vessel flagged for audit per compliance algorithm version 4.1. The language was cold, efficient, and final. There was no appeal, no context, no room for a captain's explanation. A lifetime of experience is erased by a few lines of code and a policy clause that treats every anomaly as negligence. This is how the digital noose tightens. The regulators write the rules, the algorithms enforce them, and the insurers hold the purse strings. The mariner is left stranded, guilty, until proven compliant. The old world of seamanship is replaced by a new regime: surveillance, audit, and denial, all running on autopilot. The denial letter lands like a depth charge. Captain Lena O'Rourke, age 62, opens the envelope on April 7, 2026. It is from her insurer, Pantenius Global, stamped and signed by an underwriter whose name she has never seen. The language is surgical. Claim denied due to non-compliance with recommended operator documentation per Subpart C, Section C4, as referenced in the most recent Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. Not required, not law, just recommended. But that is all it takes. The inspection report from her last port, Charleston, March 18th, sits attached as Exhibit A. The insurer has the artifact, and that one line, lacking current medical and competency file, is now the lever to void her policy. The chain reaction is instantaneous: $14,800 in storm damage, unrecoverable. The denial triggers a cascade, her marina contract is revoked, the loan on her vessel is called in, and the next port will not even let her dock without active coverage. The underwriting clause reads like a Russian doll, each layer referencing the next, each clause pointing to a regulation that, on paper, is just a suggestion. Operators are encouraged to maintain documentation. Encouraged becomes expected. Expected becomes required. Required becomes the kill switch. The insurer does not need a law. They just need a paper trail, and the Notice of Proposed Rulemaking hands it to them on a silver platter. In Lena's file, the timeline is brutal. March 18th, inspection. March 20th, port report forwarded to insurer. March 28th, underwriting review. April 3rd, claim submitted. April 7th, denial. 4 weeks to financial ruin, all triggered by a single word in a federal register. This is not an accident. The language is engineered for deniability. The Coast Guard writes the rule with a velvet glove, no mandate, just a nudge. The port inspector checks the box. The insurer connects the dots. The mariner is the only one left holding the bag. It is a closed circuit, a regulatory matryoshka, every agency and company hiding behind the next, each blaming the other, none taking responsibility. The cost is real: Lena's savings, her boat, her future. The denial letter is the final nail. Coverage voided per underwriting guidelines, referencing Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, 2025 No. 22, and Subpart C, Section C4, no appeal. The old world gave a captain the benefit of the doubt. The new world gives them a checklist and a trapdoor. Experience counts for nothing if the paperwork is not perfect. The system is designed to look voluntary until the moment it is not. One encouraged becomes a financial death sentence. The money trail is not hidden. It is spelled out, clause by clause, in every denial letter, every revoked contract, every vanished policy. The regulators write the script. The insurers play their part. And the mariners, the ones with the sea miles and the scars, are written out of their own story. Proof, not reputation, is the mariner's only defense. The sea service log comes first. Each passage, port, and weather event must be recorded, date-stamped, and signed. Insurers trust what they can audit. Without a current log, a sailor becomes invisible to those systems, uninsurable, lost in the data void. Drill videos follow. These are not for show. Record man overboard drills, fire responses, Abandoned ship routines, each clip date stamped and uncut with a GPS overlay if possible. 10 minutes of real-time action outweighs any reference letter or faded certificate. Metadata is everything. Every file must show its creation date, GPS coordinates, and, if available, a link to the vessel's AIS logs. When a port inspector or claims adjuster questions experience, the footage and its metadata speak for themselves, leaving no room for dismissal. Assessor reports form the third layer. If a practical assessment is completed, mandatory or voluntary, demand the full written report, not just a pass or fail. Insist on the assessor's notes, the scoring rubric, and a time-stamped signature. In Australia, where assessments can cost $800, every page is owed to the sailor. Keep scans, originals, and a notarized copy if possible. The more layers of documentation, the harder it becomes for an insurer to deny compliance after the fact. Physician letters must be precise. A generic fit for duty note is useless. The letter should quote the regulation directly. For example, no history of syncope, arrhythmia, or cognitive impairment. Stable on lisinopril and atorvastatin. Fit for solo passage exceeding 48 hours per RCD 2024-18. Date, signature, and medical license number are essential. If denied, let the rejection reflect the system, not the paperwork. Regulators and insurers cannot be allowed to hide behind bureaucracy. Evidence must be submitted through official portals. For U.S. rulemaking, the Federal Register comment portal remains open until December 19, 2025. Each submission is time-stamped. Advocacy groups provide templates, cite Subpart C Section C4, and reference the exact language insurers use to void coverage. Attach logs, videos, reports, and physician letters as exhibits. Demand acknowledgement and keep the confirmation number. When denials arrive, a clear paper trail exposes the process to journalists, lawyers, and legislators. Freedom of information requests are the last recourse. If stonewalled, file for inspection reports, assessor training materials, insurer correspondence, and internal memos. Agencies resist scrutiny. Every denial, every fine, every closed-door meeting must be brought into the open. The system relies on silence. Only a flood of public, time-stamped proof can break it. This is not about compliance for its own sake. The comment deadline is fixed. The portals are open. The evidence is the shield. Demand to be counted. Make them answer in writing why experience alone no longer suffices. Today, the law books show no official ban, just strategic loopholes, testing fees of $800, and encouraged rules that quietly trigger insurer crackdowns. Bureaucrats keep trading experience for compliance, while insurers pocket the difference. Age is not a crime, and yet the system profits from treating it like one. The real question is, how long before this quiet exclusion becomes our accepted norm? Share your perspective below. Silence is their ally.